to this conversation, brought to you by White House Custom Color. I'm Jed Toffer, and right now I am with Brian and Dena DeMint at Shutterfest 2018. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Fantastic.
I almost called you Gilbert. We were just talking about funny voices and what we were going to sound like and whether or not we were going to have a radio voice. And Brian was going to do Gilbert Gottfried, but we just apparently we decided against that at the very last minute.
Well, we wanted somebody to listen
for more
longer than the
for more
intro.
than 10 seconds, right? Right? How are you guys doing? Are you tired? Are you sleepy? Are you worn out?
I feel great.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a good night's sleep last night. We didn't stay up super late shooting, so we had
so
an
key.
earlier class this morning. So
It's amazing how much of a difference it makes. You come in, and some people are like, I got 3 hours of sleep, and you do that 2 or 3 nights in a row, and you're toast.
You
right?
are. Yeah. Or you get a cold at the end of the...
Or you get sick, right?
Yeah.
Every time.
And by that time, you're not taking good images anyway. You're just clicking you're just clicking the shutter. I mean, seriously.
That's so great.
God, when you can't even see, it looks blurry. Shit. It's like,
can't even
I'm
tell.
trying to focus here, but everything's blurry.
You can't even tell if it's in focus or not.
Yeah.
And then by that point, you don't care one way or the other.
Well, then you call it artistic and everything.
That's right. That's right. There was intent there.
I did that once, actually. I shot three sessions with this girl, or 3 sets, themes, and I didn't realize I had the camera in manual focus.
Oh.
So,
Everything's just slightly off.
So it
yeah.
became a part of your style, which we're going to talk about, but this was intentional.
Right. So I went ahead and edited them and sent them to her, and she was like, "Oh my God, they're so ethereal and
There you go.
beautiful."
Perfect.
And I was like, "Well, shit, yeah."
That's right. That's why I did that. That's
What are you going to do if she ever hears this podcast?
we don't know who she is.
Well, that's true. That we don't.
Lots of stuff that Brian has done has been ethereal. Right?
Yeah, that's true. Well,
Exactly. I've
mystery
left it
continues.
manual many times, but that time, yeah.
Don't say her name. Don't say her name. You know what? I was gonna ask you who you are, but I'll tell you how I know you guys, because I'm positive that you don't know. I'm guessing you don't know. I think that I was there for your first program. I think.
Really?
Do you remember what your first program was?
Well, I did one small speech for Missouri PPA.
That was it.
Oh, was it really?
That was the first time I
was there.
spoke. Yeah.
I was there. And I was with, now you might remember this, and I'm thinking this was it. Was it in the Ozarks or somewhere in the Ozarks? Or,
Yeah, it was.
Hillbilly Land.
Yeah, I can't remember what that even resort is called. I think
Shangri-La.
Tantera.
Tantera.
Oh.
That was it. I was going to say it starts with a T, but I can't remember it.
Yeah.
But that's where we were at, and I was sitting in the room because we were there. Vicky was speaking, and Gary Box was there, and Rod Evans was there, and the Ann Tisdells were there. Kaya and Andy were there at least, and we were sitting there, and I didn't know who you were at all. I didn't, because it was rare that I would even go to a program. But I'm sitting there with Rod and Gary, and you get up, and you start doing your thing, right? And I remember the 3 of us were kind of like, well, you can't do that. Well, that's not gonna. How are you gonna? How is he like asking like
Yeah.
out loud saying these things to each other? And then we start seeing what's going on. I remember you had a floodlight that you said you just got at like Home Depot or something for like $6.
Yeah.
And you're like bringing it around, and we're actually seeing what's happening. And I'm not a photographer, but those guys, of course, are fantastic photographers. And for the next 45 minutes, I was sitting between 2 guys that had their mouths on the floor.
Really?
Oh, that's
I'll never forget
awesome
it.
to hear.
I'll never forget it. And me too, but it's way more impressive that their mouths were just agape. And they kept saying, "This is amazing. Have you ever seen anything like this?" No, I didn't know. I've never in my life experienced anything like this. That was at your program. There was like, how many people were in that room? 30?
Something like that.
Something like
Give
And
or
I
take.
didn't know who anybody was.
No, you didn't know it. You didn't know a soul.
No, I
and
didn't.
you just went in there and you did your thing. man, you just did, and it was great because I thought maybe you came across like you were a little bit nervous, but it was almost at the same time like you were like, this is who I am, this is what I do, and like you kept saying things like that. You're like, this is what I do, and then this is what happens, and then we saw your images, and it was like, again, the mouth's on the floor. That is incredible.
It's a fluke he was even there.
To begin with?
Yes, the one of the local photographers had talked to was it the president at the time of Missouri PPA?
Yes.
And had shown his pictures and had negative comments and what a joke this dude is.
Well, they didn't know what they were talking about.
And then the president was like, "Well, I'm inviting him."
Yeah. That's what he did. He's like, he showed me
brought
that.
him to the president to like put you down.
Yeah, he did actually.
Yeah.
And then the president was like, "This is not only kind of different and cool. I think I'm going to ask him to speak." So I didn't know. I mean, then the Tisdales, then they invited me to spa, and then Rod Evans kind of took me under his wing.
The rest is history after that day, I feel like, honestly.
And it's still, and I will say this, is that I still have that mentality that I've never asked to speak anywhere.
Right.
I did put in for Shutterfest the first time, and that was the only time I've ever asked to speak anywhere. So if people come to me, I'm not arrogant enough to think that my images are all that, so that I should be speaking at your conference because I'm such a stud. Right. So, but so if they come to me, then I feel like they really want me at their conference or whatever, and then so it's been very flattering.
So you guys are from? Is it Joplin?
I'm afraid so.
Yeah. I'm actually even further Hickville. I'm from Oklahoma.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah, it gets worse.
Yeah.
Do you live in Joplin now?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay. And so tell a little bit of just about who you guys are and give a little bit of background for people that don't know.
Go ahead, Dena.
Well, my name's Dena DeMint. We live in Joplin, of course. I've been married 29
years.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
28,000 years.
Between 0 and 1,000. Yeah.
I get that.
Just a normal upbringing and stuff, but then Brian fell into this photography thing, and he found out makeup and hair were so vital to that.
Right.
And I didn't do either of those things.
At the time.
No, not at the time. I was a preschool teacher's aide. So then one weekend we had a group shoot, and he's like, "You're up.
Right.
Do it."
Really?
Yeah.
It was like that.
It was. I had a friend that did makeup for Brian once in a while, and she showed me a couple basic MAC makeup techniques.
Sure.
And the rest was practicing all my friends' teenagers.
And kind of the rest is history after that with you too, right?
Yeah.
Like that's your
Thrown
thing.
into the fire sort of thing. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I liked to draw as a kid, so that probably helped a little bit. But that's it. Yeah,
but you bring it's, in all fairness, you bring your own creative piece to the whole element of what it is that you guys do. Is that fair to say, Brian? That
I contribute, but Brian is definitely the ship commander and chief.
Sure.
I'm like Captain Bligh.
Yeah.
I'm a total control freak. In fact, it's been suggested we change the name from iWorks to Control Freak Photography.
But at least you're self-aware. You know that's what's up.
I think the thing for me is that I'm ultimately responsible for the images.
Yeah.
So, and I feel that they have to have the harmony, and so if I have an idea, then I kind of run it past Dena as far as makeup. And at first I didn't realize that certain makeup things don't work on certain faces.
So it's been a learning process for both of you for years.
Yeah, and the challenges he comes up with. Some guy walks into the studio, and at the time was just our home, and he's like, "I want to do a Jesus shoot," and I'm like, "Okay, there's some grapevine in the backyard. Let me run and grab that." So it's like being the MacGyver of fashion styling.
Right. I've heard that name associated with you guys maybe before. Right? The MacGyver.
You can put it together with duct tape.
That was
we
funny
can put it together.
I had that piece of cloth and I was cutting it, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm making you a diaper, Jesus." And he's like, "What?" And he'd never shot before, so it was like, "All right, strip down, go put this diaper on, put this stuff on your head, and
that's what you wanted.
We're gonna do it." And it turned out really, really interesting. He really pulled it off. And then I worked at a power plant for 37 years that was 100 years old.
Right.
So the textures that I pulled to put over his body were textures that I'd shot at the power plant. So it was rust and dripping steam and things like that. But when I put it over his body, then it looked like blood, and it looked like marred skin, and it looked, authentic.
It fit.
It did fit, exactly.
How would you, so what we were going to talk about today was essentially your style and what kind of the way that you're different in a sense. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, different is a good word. Yeah. I've been described as many things. So,
what's your philosophy behind that? I mean, maybe it's not something that you really consciously think about, but if you take a step back from it, where do you see yourself in the realm of the photo industry in general?
I see myself as an outsider artist.
Yeah.
Like art brute type of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't really conform to what I never have been a conformist to. You have to use this kind of lighting, you have to use this camera, blah blah blah. And I think that's what developed the style, is that I didn't look at photography books. I was looking at Man Ray's work. I was looking at Irving Penn. I was looking at paintings, and I used to love to paint, so Renaissance art and all this stuff. So I was just, let's just make it work with what we got. One of my favorite artists is Robert Rauschenberg, and one of his quotes is that a pair of socks is just as suitable for making a painting as wood, turpentine, and canvas.
Oh my goodness. That sounds right up your alley.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it kind of gives some validity to what I try to teach and what I do. It's one thing for, Joe Blow from Joplin, Missouri to say it, but when I can say, here's a quote from Robert Rauschenberg, one of the most famous American artists, or John Cage or any of the other neo-Dadaist artists, then it kind of gives some validity to what I'm doing, and I try to find quotes that are inspirational for me and others, but I never did take the normal route through the photography. I always came up on the artistic side. So I'm still technically inept. I mean, no, I seriously am. If I take an image, if it sucks, then I turn that dial on the back. And if it sucks more, I turn it the other way.
You go the other way.
I do think it's the lack of formal training that means that he's finding his own way instead of following the pattern that's been set.
You haven't been influenced by many of the norms, for one thing, that exist so prevalently and powerfully within the industry, within the various organizations. Like you haven't followed that path, like so many people do. You've kind of cut your own way. Does that sound?
Yeah, I think that's it. And as far as like being goal driven, I'm really not goal driven. I just create what I do, and if people like it, that's great, and if they don't like it, that's great as well. I'm not here to please everybody. I think if you do please everybody, you're probably a bit boring.
What does drive you?
There's a number of things that drive me. At first, it was just the thought, okay, I'm creating something. I'm doing better. I'm doing more than scoring, getting high scores on video games, which I played for 20 years. So at first it was just creating. And then a turning moment for me was a mom brought a kid in that was about 17 years old. This kid did not want to be shot whatsoever. And she did not want to be there. And I told her, I took the kid to the back and said, look, I know you don't want to be here. I can tell by your body language, and I'm sorry, but your mom's already paid me, and I've already spent the money. So it's either take your picture or go mow your damn yard or something. So one of the things is going to happen. So, and I'd rather take your picture than mow your yard. So I said, I'll just make it quick and easy, and we'll get you out of here as quick as we can. Yeah. And so we started taking pictures, and she was just a natural poser, because I let girls pose on their own and guys pose on their own. And so after a little bit, I thought she was doing well. I thought, well, I'll give her some confidence. I'll show her a couple images because she's doing pretty well. So I showed her an image, which I hardly ever do on the back of the camera because I'm not a good photographer, and she started bawling.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that I made a bad situation even worse for you.
Because you thought she was upset.
Yes. And she said, no, you don't understand. She said, this is the first time I ever thought that I was beautiful.
Oh my God.
Yeah. From low to high.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You talk about getting hit by a ton of bricks.
I just did. I feel like I just did. That's amazing.
It was life-changing, and I understood then that with that camera and what we say and the images that come out of it and the words that come out of our mouth, we have the ability to change how people feel about themselves and give some of these kids back some self-worth that's been taken from them and some things like that. So
I don't think you could have answered the question, what drives you better than that, honestly.
That's what's changed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can absolutely tell. With considering your style and who you are and the way that you've done things, if it's been, let's call it unorthodox for lack of a better term, right? What have you run into? Have you run into issues with people that maybe are intimidated? I mean, maybe who knows what it looks like on the surface, but do they come at you or do they try to?
Oh, I had a lot of hate at first.
Maybe that's what I'm asking. You really have?
When I first started, because the whole industry was different then, and everybody came up with reasons why I wasn't a real photographer.
What year was this?
Oh, this is about 2005, 2006.
Yes.
And digital was really just kind of into their own. To its own. And so I wasn't, I got messages and people talking that I wasn't a real photographer because I never shot film. I wasn't a real photographer because I didn't support my family with it. I wasn't a real photographer because I used Photoshop. I wasn't a real photographer because I used Canon Rebel. I wasn't a real photographer because I used, lights from Walmart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, you guys, I don't argue about that stuff. You have your opinion and that's fine and that's cool, but and while you do that, I'll speak at my 4th Shutterfest.
Right to a room full of people just can't believe what they're watching.
I don't mean that to sound arrogant, but
well, that's true though.
It's one of those things that if it works, just do it instead of worrying about what everybody else says.
Amen.
It doesn't come. People don't come at me like they used to.
Right.
But I think that they did feel like, I didn't put in the time. I didn't put in the effort. I didn't put in the dark room.
Half the examples you gave, people wouldn't even consider coming at with. I mean, I could see people still coming at you with hateful comments, but half of those comments back then, I could understand why people would say some of that stuff, like, because that's what people were saying. Like, oh, you never shot film. Like, no one is going to complain to you now that you can't be a photographer because you never shot film. Like those complaints themselves are so outdated and antiquated that they sound ridiculous now.
They really do. And the photography just keeps changing so much that
Right.
Yeah.
He had a fellow write once and analyze his lighting and tell him what he was shooting with. Alien something.
Yeah, this guy wrote me and said, it looks like you're shooting with alien bees. That's a term in it.
Yep.
And then you're supposed to be doing, and you're
some
doing
type of
this.
Modifier.
And gave me some lighting ratios or something.
Trying to tell you how you can make your work better, I'm assuming.
No, he told me what I was, he said, is this what you're using? Because this is what appears what you're using.
Right.
And I said, no, I'm actually using 2 clamp lights from Walmart at like 45-degree angles. And he wrote me back. He said, look, you don't have to insult me. He
thought you were he thought you were putting him down.
If you don't want to tell me, you don't have to insult me. And I was like,
insult my intelligence, right?
I was just telling you the truth, sir.
Yeah, exactly. No, he was. And then I had another guy write me once, and he said, Mr. DeMint, I just would like you to know that I absolutely hate every single image I've seen you produce. Sincerely, or yours truly, blah, blah, blah.
Really?
Yeah, and I got it, and I looked at it, and I was like, wow, I thought I sucked, but this kind of confirms I suck. Yeah, but then about 5 minutes later, I was like, well, maybe this guy likes, ZZ Top and and like,
He's just an angry dude.
and Britney Spears and sushi and baseball and all this crap that I can't stand. So
Right.
maybe if I struck a chord with him, that's a good thing. Maybe I don't
You don't want to be friends with him anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. If he
It's not
liked
gonna
my
work out
work,
between us anyway, buddy.
yeah. If he liked my work, I may have been really offended had I met him.
Right.
It's like
Exactly. He saved you the trouble.
yeah, exactly.
Dina, what has this ride, I'll call this whole thing a ride, the last, say, 13 years, what has it been like for you to kind of watch and experience from your point of view?
Well, the first thing was, they say people's personalities don't change.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met Brian and married him, he was incredibly shy.
Yeah.
I would be telling my friends, he is so funny. He's brilliant. He's hilarious.
Right.
And then I'd bring him to a party and he'd just sit there on the couch being very quiet.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah, well, I just sit there and judge the living crap out of everybody.
Oh, that's perfect. And so true, I bet. You didn't make that up.
Yeah, I got lots of friends from Oklahoma. So
Oh, my.
but to see him up on stage and fearlessly up on stage.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to get nervous. He just goes up there and he's himself. And before, he wouldn't show that side. It's been interesting.
Yeah, he's
on
the
that.
man. He's the man that you
Yeah.
like in public and out in front of people now.
Yes.
Have you seen that happen in yourself? Have you felt that happen, that you're able to
It's like
maybe
a
come out of your
switch.
shell or something?
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable, truly, because before I gave my first lecture, I did some computer work out at the Christian school we sent our daughter to, and I gave them some recommendations because they got taken really bad on the
library system.
shifty salesman.
Sure.
And so they said, well, would you present it to the school board? It was just like 10 people that I actually knew.
Right.
And by the time I got done with that little speech, people were asking me if I was okay.
Yes.
I had sweat pouring off. I looked like I was
'Cause you
going
were
through a
so
heart attack.
nervous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
voice was quivering so bad that because I worked at the switchboard for 3 years by myself. I never saw a person to set my relief. And then I
Really?
worked 18 years in a basement job where I didn't have to see anybody if I didn't want to.
Right.
At the power plant.
So you were just used to
So-
that. You were comfortable with that.
I was.
Yeah.
And then I got the great feedback from Rod and Kia and those people.
Yeah.
And then they asked me to speak at Spa.
Yeah.
And then Rod pulled a fast one on me at Spa. And that's when everything really changed.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? I mean, I was there, and I should remember what you're talking about. But what did he do?
They had a big speech on stage the last night, or was it, or the first night? No, last night, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Rod was going to talk, and you were going to do demos.
I was just
Of
supposed to
the
be in the
equipment.
back like a Price is Right showgirl.
Oh, he was good. He presented it to you like he was easing you in.
Well, no, it was Kia that said we're going to have Rod talk and we're going to have you show stuff.
Yeah.
And then I started asking Rod like months before, like, what are we going to do? And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll get to it." So
I'll get back in touch with you.
yeah, we went back and forth for a while, and it was like, 2 weeks before the show, 2 days before the show, at the damn show, I'm like, I see him walk in, I'm like, my God, we go on tonight. I need you to tell me what I need to do. I had brought nothing. I don't know what to do. And he's like, hey, we have a little bit of a mic check before we go on. And then we'll talk about it then. And I'm like, they're going to take me out of here in a body bag because I'm about to have a nervous
You were
breakdown.
gonna die.
So we go to the sound check, and this is like 10 minutes before we're supposed to go on. He said, okay, you just take the first hour and I'll take the second.
No way.
Yeah.
Swear to God.
So he came running down the stage, grabbed our daughter, some napkins, and started writing out a couple things.
Are
to
you
say.
serious?
My speech started 2 minutes before I went on stage.
started.
Really.
You wrote your speech right beforehand.
Yeah, on the balcony outside, like right outside when people were going in. And there was like 200 or something like that.
Sure.
It was big.
Sure, 200 or 300 people. I bet. Do you think that was good for you, in a sense? In hindsight, right?
In hindsight, definitely,
because you didn't have to worry. You didn't have that on you for all that time.
And Rod knew what he was doing because he had seen me speak before.
Yeah.
And he said, "I don't want you to be like every other speaker.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing,
right?
And you're speaking for different than anybody else.
Just get up there and do you, right?
You know." And I was in the middle of that, and I started faltering a bit, and somebody from the audience, I don't know who it was, a lady said, "We love you. Keep going."
Really?
And that really hit a spark with me.
That's all you needed.
And so we did. I did. And then when I came off, nobody was really talking to me there the whole first couple days we were there.
Yeah.
They were like, "Who's this weird dude?"
Who's this guy?
Yeah. But when I come off the stage, people were like shaking my hand and
it
stuff.
was like an after-school special.
I
like
had
when
somebody
everything...
come up and she said, "I listened to your whole program and everything."
And followed it.
And then what'd she say, Dena?
And he said, yeah, thanks. And she goes, "You don't understand. I have ADHD."
And she stuck with you.
Yeah. So it was interesting. And then one lady came up and said, "I really enjoyed your routine." And I said, I actually shoot like that. And she's like, "Oh."
Yeah, right.
She
like,
was
no,
like,
"That's what
that
I
was
do."
the great comedy act. It was
Like
good.
a handshake at the end from somebody at the back. I can't remember, like the sound guy.
The sound guy, he came over and shook my hand. He said, I've been doing this for many, many years, and that's the most unique speech I've ever heard.
I see. I have no doubt, and I know I was there for that one too. But I remember the first time so much more vividly because of what the impact that it has had on me. It is amazing that I think what strikes me about you in particular is that there just aren't people like you, right? And you're being yourself, but I feel like sure there are other people that surely are just being themselves as well, but
Sure.
there's nobody like you.
No, there isn't. Yeah.
That's probably a good
They
thing,
burned that
actually.
mold down. Yeah. Right after creation. Yeah.
Yeah, what was that? They destroyed the mold after they made me and beat the hell out of the mold maker.
What's coming next for you guys, do you think? Like what do you see the next, because now you're retired from your job at the plant, so now this is what you do, is that right? Like this is your thing?
No, actually not.
All right, help me out.
I thought that it was going to be.
Okay.
And I really thought, okay, this is where I'm going to go. But I had a low point when I got out of my job, and I still thought that. And then at the beginning of last year, I thought I was not producing any good work. And then around August, I had only put up 6 images that I had created that year, because I thought, and I only put those up just to let people know I was still freaking alive.
Okay.
And then right after Light Pro, and then I did another small program, and I told my wife, I said, "I think I'm done."
Is that right?
Yeah, I said, I think I'm done. I think I've hit where I've I'm not going to grow anymore, and that I think that I'm not helping people like I used to help people. I'm not producing art that is moving people like I should be doing.
What brought you out of it?
A speech that I did in Kansas. I was offline for 2 months. I stayed away from social media. I didn't shoot. I didn't edit. I didn't do anything for 2 months. But I had commitments that I had to fulfill. And one of them was speaking for the Kansas PPA.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere during that speech, in the
Enthusiastic.
Yeah. That's why I'm not a writer. It came back.
Really?
It came back during that speech.
Really? You felt it come back?
I felt it come back, because on the way up, I told Dena I was done.
Is that right? I had no idea. When was that? Last fall?
That was about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, that was this year.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
drove up in an ice storm. So I remember.
Well,
Yeah.
now you're back.
I'm back, and it feels really good, actually, because I don't really know what recharged that battery. I think it was the fact that people were so receptive to what I had to say
Yeah.
that that I thought maybe I still do have a voice. Maybe I still have something left to give out there. So we'll see what comes about. If people contact me, that's great. And if they don't, then, I do love the teaching, because I don't think that I'm a very good artist, but I think I have the ability to make other people better artists.
Of course. I would agree to that. I would agree that you have I would disagree that you're not a good artist, because I've seen it in action and I've seen your work. But I agree 100% that you make other people better artists, because people don't know what to do with you even. In their minds, they don't know what to do.
That's what Dave Junion said.
They have no choice. They can either grow or die. I mean, that's like their option when they see you, is what I think.
It is, and I appeal to a certain crowd. And one of the problems for me is that crowd is not at these conferences, because I appeal to the new shooters, to the young shooters that don't have to feel like they have to go out and buy tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment to be an artist or whatever.
Right.
But you don't see the college crowd at these things.
Not as much, no.
And that's what I just put a post up on my Facebook, that why can't we get the college kids here?
Right.
Because they're going to graduate and they're going to go out in the real world, and they're going to get their ass kicked.
Right.
Because they don't teach business of photography in school.
Nope.
Or business of being a fine art painter or that kind of thing. So these conferences, it's invaluable, the information that you can get from people who have real world experience of running a business, of showing art in a gallery, of doing these things.
Well, you got to keep going, man. Don't stop.
Yeah,
I'm just telling you. Let that sink in, man. Don't stop. You can't stop. You got to keep going.
I don't know where he gets the humility thing from, because if I was doing this stuff myself, I'd just be obnoxiously arrogant all the time, with sunglasses on 24/7.
You wouldn't.
Yeah,
You're like the
collar
sweetest
popped
person
up
on
like
earth.
80s cool.
No.
You need to keep rolling. I mean, even if you got to get to the point where you have to knock on people's doors and remind them that you're around, you can't stop doing this.
Yeah, and I don't want to push it on anybody, for sure, but if I can make kids feel better about themselves, and I can put art out there that people respond to, that feels good.
It's too important, really. I mean, even your story about what happened with that girl, that's a big deal, and you're the real deal, and so you and your influence need to stay out there in the photographic ether, my friend. Don't give it up anytime soon.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Well, and I appreciate your time, you guys. I know that these conventions are busy, and I say this to so many people that I do these interviews with, but for people listening, I mean, you get tired and worn out at these shows, not just physically, but your brain starts to hurt. So I appreciate you making the effort to have this conversation with me and giving me some of your time.
I appreciate it very much. And while I'm on this cast, I want to thank my wife for supporting me through all this, and for my daughter, who's a professional makeup artist now and coming up and supporting me as well. So
she's amazing.
It could go very, it's tough, and sometimes when things don't go as well as you want them to, then you need that person there to say, yeah, it's all right, it's cool, it's good. So
keep on going. You too, Dena.
Yeah, I've loved every minute of this. It's been a fun ride so far.
It's been fun to watch, and I look forward to doing it for many, many more years.
All right.
You guys have a good one.
All right.
Thank you, Jed. And thank you,
very
White
much.
House Custom Color.
Yes.
Right on.